Righto, let's start with a scene I've watched far too many times. Something goes pear-shaped at work. Sirens maybe, paperwork definitely. And before the dust has even settled, someone says, "So who stuffed up?" Not what happened. Not what changed. Not what controls failed. Just, who do we pin it on? Blame arrives before facts. It catches the first bloke still standing near the mess, usually the last person in the chain, and everyone feels weirdly relieved. Beauty, we've found the cause. Pack it up. Put human error on the form and go home. Problem is, that's usually rubbish. Incidents rarely have one neat cause tied up with a bow. That's not how work happens, and it's not how work fails. Real work is messy. People are juggling production, time pressure, changing conditions, dodgy gear, unclear instructions, and all the unwritten stuff that never quite makes it into the procedure. Then something goes wrong, and we pretend the whole event began at the exact second a worker pressed the wrong button, missed the step, or drove too fast. Convenient? Yep. Useful? Not much. In a decent investigation, you've got to get past the obvious trigger. The obvious thing is just the bit you can see. The contributing factors are the stuff hiding underneath it. They're the conditions, decisions, gaps, weaknesses, and failed controls that made the obvious thing possible in the first place. Sometimes they sit in the people bit: training, competence, fatigue, distraction. Sometimes they sit in the environment: lighting, noise, weather, congestion, layout. Sometimes it's equipment, procedures, or the organisation itself quietly setting the trap days, months, even years before the incident. That's why I get cranky when I hear, "The operator caused the incident." Maybe the operator did something that directly led to the loss of control. Fine. But that's not the same as saying they are the full cause. There's a difference between the action at the sharp end and the system that shaped it. One is visible. One actually teaches you something. And look, this matters, because if you blame the last person, your fixes will be just as lazy as your thinking. More training. Send a reminder. Tell workers to be careful. Maybe a toolbox talk with some underlined words and a sad photo. Then 6 months later, bang! The same sort of event comes back wearing different boots. A good investigator doesn't ask, "Who can we blame?" They ask, "What contributed?" That's the shift. Contributing factors are the bridge from blame to learning. They help you see the event as part of a system, not a morality play starring one unlucky worker. And once you start seeing that, you stop writing thicker reports and start building better defenses, which, last time I checked, is the bloody point. So what are contributing factors, properly? Simple version, they're the things that helped the incident happen, helped it get worse, or failed to stop it. Not random background noise, not every fact in the room. Contributing factors are the conditions, actions, or deficiencies that mattered. A handy way to gather them is to think in 5 buckets: people, environment, equipment, procedures, and organisation. PEOP. Easy to remember, and more importantly, it stops your brain from locking onto one pet theory too early. People covers the humans involved, their training, experience, communication, supervision, fatigue, alertness, work as actually done versus work as imagined by someone in an office. Environment is the scene: light, noise, weather, road condition, layout, congestion, heat, dust, all that fun stuff. Equipment is the plant, tools, vehicles, interfaces, condition, design, maintenance, labels, guarding. Procedures is the paperwork and work method. Was there one? Was it suitable? Was it current? Was it used? And if not, why not? Then organisation. That's the big end of town. Planning, contractor management, communication systems, resourcing, risk management, training programs, learning from previous events, culture. Now, here's a really important split. Some failures are active, some are latent. Active failures are the things happening close to the event: an error, a violation, a decision, an action, a missed check. That's the bit everybody notices. Latent conditions are older, buried deeper, and usually more awkward. A badly designed process, no training package, a management of change failure, a risk assessment that never got updated, repeated non-compliance that everyone got used to. Those things can sit around for ages like a brown snake under the deck. Then one day, someone steps in exactly the wrong spot. And then you've got controls, defenses. One weak or absent defense can turn a small stuff-up into a proper mess. A worker makes a mistake. Fine, humans do that. But if the warning system is poor, the procedure is vague, the supervision's absent, and the physical barrier isn't there, now that little error has room to run. That's the game. We're not investigating perfection. We're investigating how a system failed to be error-tolerant. That's why I bang on about defenses. Good systems assume people will slip, lapse, misjudge, or take shortcuts under the wrong pressures. They build in awareness, detection, recovery, protection, escape, layers that either stop the event or soften the hit. When those layers are missing or flimsy, you don't have one cause. You've got a lineup of contributors, all taking turns opening the gate. So when you hear contributing factors, don't think academic waffle, think practical map. What did the people bring? What did the environment do? What was the gear like? How good were the procedures? And what did the organisation quietly set in motion long before the incident? That's where the real story lives. Now, one of the biggest traps in investigations is stopping at the symptom and calling it insight. It's the workplace equivalent of seeing smoke and writing, "Cause of fire, flames." Thanks, Einstein. Take the classic road example. The driver ran the red light. Did they? Maybe. But if you stop there, you've explained bugger all. Why didn't they stop? Was the light hard to see? Was vegetation blocking the view? Was maintenance delayed? Was a key bit of equipment unavailable to do that maintenance? Suddenly, you're not just talking about a driver. You're talking about visibility, upkeep, scheduling, and management decisions. Same event, very different learning. Or the forklift-style warehouse incident. A bloke gets struck by his own forklift on night shift. If your conclusion is operator error, you've basically thrown your pen in the bin. What was the layout like? What was visibility like? What was happening on that shift? What procedures applied? What communication existed? What supervision? What condition was the equipment in? What pressure was on the task? The point isn't to excuse the action. The point is to explain it properly. I've seen reports with phrases like human error, failure to follow procedure, and lack of situational awareness just sitting there like they mean something on their own. They don't. They are placeholders for unfinished thinking. Human error is not a stopping point. It's an invitation to keep digging. Same with procedural non-compliance. If someone didn't follow the procedure, was it available, suitable, current, understood, workable, supervised, and consistent with the actual job? If not, then congratulations, you've got context. If you never ask that, you've got a slogan. And bad context creates bad recommendations. If you think the whole problem was one worker making a poor choice, your actions will drift toward warning, retraining, reminding, disciplining. Cheap, tidy, ineffective. If the real issue was planning, equipment design, conflicting goals, or management tolerance of shortcuts, then your neat little admin fix is lipstick on a bulldozer. The 5 Whys mob, when they use it well, understand this too. The trick is not just asking why 5 times like a toddler full of red cordial. The trick is asking the right why at the right point, and not following one lazy causal chain just because it feels familiar. Sometimes the answer is a condition, then an event, then an organisational factor. Sometimes you hit a point beyond control. Sometimes you realise you need more data. Good. That's called investigating. So if your report lands on operator error in under 10 minutes, you haven't solved anything. You've just named the symptom and walked off. And the system, smug as ever, stays exactly the same. Alright, so how do the decent investigators actually find the real story without drifting into fantasy, politics, or hindsight nonsense? Discipline, structure, and a healthy suspicion of the first answer that sounds tidy. That's where PEPO earns its keep. People, environment, equipment, procedures, organisation. First pass, PEPO Mark 1 if you like. Brainstorm your data sources, not your conclusions, your sources. Who do we need to talk to? What gear do we inspect? What documents matter? What scene conditions need checking? What organisational records might tell us something? The point is to plan the gather before you charge around the site collecting random scraps like an overexcited magpie. Then you go and gather. Scene inspection matters because physical evidence doesn't wait for your calendar invite. Weather changes it, clean-up crews move it, people tidy it up, and suddenly the thing you needed is gone. Photos, sketches, positions of equipment, controls, barriers, sightlines, housekeeping, lighting. All of that can tell you what people either can't remember or never noticed. And yes, if you're reconstructing an event, don't create a second one. I shouldn't have to say that, but here we are. Interviews are another big one. But treat witness memory with respect and caution. Memory is not CCTV. It's fallible, movable, and easily contaminated. That's why good interviewers start broad, free recall, open questions, then narrow down. They listen properly. They paraphrase. They don't lead the witness into agreeing with some half-baked theory. They don't use loaded rubbish like, "How careless was he?" We are gathering information, not auditioning for courtroom drama. And then there's documentation. Procedures, permits, JSAs, maintenance records, training records, rosters, work orders, previous incident reports, audit findings, risk assessments. This is where investigators often find the gap between work as imagined and work as done. The document says one thing, the task demanded another, and the worker built a workaround because the system left them no sensible option. That matters. Here's the magic question that too many investigators forget. If not, why not? Was a risk assessment done? If not, why not? Was the procedure followed? If not, why not? Was the warning system effective? If not, why not? Was supervision present? If not, why not? That one little follow-up drags you out of shallow water very quickly. And cross-check everything. Interview says one thing, scene says another, document says a third. Good. That tension is useful. It forces you to validate facts instead of collecting opinions. A proper investigation uses only information supported by evidence, not vibes, not assumptions, not what some manager reckons would never happen here. Love that line, by the way. Usually said 5 minutes before you prove it did. Good investigators stay neutral, persistent, and a bit annoying. In the best possible way. They don't settle for the obvious. They keep the process on track. And they let the evidence tell the story, even when the story is politically ugly. Finding contributing factors is only half the job. If your corrective actions are flimsy, all you've done is write a smarter obituary for the same future incident. Good findings should lead to defensible actions, meaning you can point to the evidence, point to the factor, and show exactly why the action makes sense. If the investigation identified no formal risk assessment, vague procedures, poor communication, and missing physical separation, then the fix should hit those things, not wander off into retrain workers to be more careful. That's not a corrective action. That's a confession you didn't know what else to do. This is where the hierarchy of controls should be more than a poster in the lunchroom. If you can eliminate a hazard, do that. Substitute it, isolate it, engineer around it, great. Administrative controls and PPE still have a place, sure, but they sit lower for a reason. The risk still exists. They depend on people remembering, complying, noticing, and behaving perfectly in imperfect systems. And, spoiler alert, humans are not vending machines. You don't press procedure and get flawless compliance every time. Now, not every recommendation can be gold-plated engineering. Real life exists. Cost, practicality, suitability, timing, all that matters. But there's a world of difference between we assessed options and this is the highest order realistic control and we sent an email reminder because it was easy. One is risk management. The other is admin theatre. I like recommendations that are smarter. Specific, measurable, accountable, reasonable, timely, effective, reviewed. gives them a backbone. Who owns it? By when? How will we know it worked? And just as important, does it create new risks somewhere else? Management needs to evaluate that properly before spraying changes all over the place. This is also why learning beats punishment if prevention is the goal. Discipline might still have a place in a fair and just culture, especially around deliberate, reckless behaviour. Fine. But if your first instinct after every incident is punishment, people will hide errors, minimise details, and shut their mouths right when you need honesty most. Then your data gets worse, your learning gets worse, and your repeat events get better attendance than your safety meetings. What we're after is stronger systems and stronger defences. Better planning, clearer procedures, better design. Competency that's verified, not assumed. Better contractor controls, better communication processes, better detection, protection, containment, recovery. That's how contributing factors become prevention. So when you write actions, ask yourself, does this actually reduce risk or just make us feel organised? Harsh question, I know. Bloody useful though. Now for the leaders. If you're a manager, superintendent, executive, whatever fancy title LinkedIn has given you this week, the investigation doesn't end when the report lands in your inbox. That's when your bit starts. Leaders have responsibilities in reviewing, endorsing, resourcing, and monitoring what comes out of an investigation. Not just nodding gravely in a meeting and asking for a 2-slide summary. Due diligence means knowing what risks sit in your operations, understanding what the investigation found, ensuring the business has the resources and processes to respond, and verifying that actions are actually used and actually work, not theoretically, in the real world. That means asking a few very practical questions. Was the investigation scoped properly? Was the team competent and independent enough? Do the findings line up with evidence? Do the recommendations actually address the absent or failed defences and organisational factors? Are we pushing controls up the hierarchy where we can? Have we assigned accountable owners and realistic timeframes? And, this is the big one, how are we tracking closeout and checking effectiveness? Because closeout is where plenty of organisations fall in a heap. They're brilliant at launching actions, love a spreadsheet, love a traffic light dashboard, but completion gets confused with control. Action closed is not the same as risk reduced. If you changed the procedure, did anyone use it? If you trained people, did it shift practice? If you installed a control, did it work under real conditions? If you don't monitor that, you're managing paperwork, not risk. Governance also means spotting patterns. One incident might show a local issue. 5 incidents with the same codes: communication, contractor management, risk management, training, incompatible goals. Now you've got a business problem, not a site quirk. That's why coded findings and decent reports matter. They help leaders see trends across what look like different events. Same weakness, different day. And for the love of common sense, don't go quiet after incidents. Leadership silence says plenty, and none of it's good. People want acknowledgement, clarity, and evidence the business intends to learn, not bury the thing under legal fumes and management discomfort. You don't need a speech from a marble podium. You do need visible follow-through. The practical payoff is pretty straightforward. Fewer repeat events, stronger systems, better risk controls, better credibility, and less nonsense. Less finger-pointing, less admin fluff, less surprise when known problems bite again. You build an organisation that learns instead of one that just reacts. That's the whole point of good investigation work. Not blame, not theatre. Learning that hardens the system before the next window of opportunity opens up. Anyway, that's enough from me for today. Next time, we'll keep digging into the bits people still get wrong. Because believe me, there's no shortage of material.